The 19-year-old alien princess taunted the human soldier. So he took off his armor. Lieutenant Ethan Gray had never seen a world like Urindor. From the observation deck of the human exploration ship, he stared at the floating crystal cities that sparkled in the twin suns. The forests below glowed with soft blue light, and rivers of liquid silver wound between crystalline mountains. It was beautiful, breathtaking, and a little intimidating. Humanity had sent him here not as a soldier to fight, but as a representative of peace. Yet even with that knowledge, he could not shake the nervous thrill that ran through him. The mission was simple in description: make contact with the Urindorians, understand their culture, and build trust. In practice, it was anything but simple. This planet was unlike any other humans had visited. Gravity in some regions shifted unpredictably. Strange energy pulses pulsed through the air, sometimes bending light in ways that made distances seem distorted. And at the center of it all was the Urindorian royal family, a race of beings whose sophistication and technology surpassed anything humanity had seen. Ethan adjusted the collar of his armor. Though it was designed for protection, he knew it could not shield him from misunderstandings or embarrassment in this alien world. He stepped off the shuttle, feeling the soft, glowing surface beneath his boots. The air was warm, tinged with an aroma like flowers and ozone. A corridor led him into the grand palace, where walls shimmered like liquid glass and soft, melodic hums resonated in the air. And then he saw her. The Princess of Urindor, Lyriel, stood at the center of the hall. She was young, perhaps 19 by human reckoning, but radiated a confidence and playfulness that seemed far beyond her years. Her skin glimmered faintly in the soft light, and her eyes were a vivid shade of green that seemed almost too bright, too alive to be real. She was draped in flowing garments that shifted colors with her movement, reflecting the light around her. Lyriel tilted her head slightly when she noticed him. "Ah," she said, her voice a musical chime. "A human soldier come to our city." "Tell me, Lieutenant Gray, do humans always hide behind their armor?" Ethan straightened. "Armor is for protection," he replied evenly, "but I am here for dialogue, not conflict." The princess laughed lightly. "Dialogue, yes. But how will I know you are brave if you never take risks? If you never show who you truly are?" Her eyes sparkled as though she were challenging him personally. He hesitated, unsure how to respond. No human had ever met her before, and he knew that the wrong word could cause offense. But Ethan was not a man to back down from a challenge, especially one that seemed more playful than threatening. "My bravery," he said, "is not in my armor or weapons. It is in my actions and my choices." Lyriel raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Bold words, but words are easy. Actions, that is where truth lies." With that, she gestured gracefully, and a large section of the palace wall slid open, revealing a vast garden outside. But this was no ordinary garden. Trees floated in midair, their roots curling elegantly around glowing crystals. Streams flowed upward into the sky before bending back down like liquid ribbons. And the paths were not fixed. They shifted as though the garden itself were alive. "This will be your test," she said, her eyes glinting with mischief. "If you can navigate my garden and show your true self, then perhaps I will believe your bravery. If not," she smiled, a teasing curl of her lips, "you will remain just a soldier in armor." Ethan took a deep breath. "I accept." The garden seemed to respond to her words, as if acknowledging the challenge. Paths shifted subtly beneath his feet, and the floating trees moved ever so slightly, creating new roots. Ethan realized that this would require more than physical skill. He would need observation, patience, and an understanding of the subtle patterns in this alien environment. Lyriel floated alongside him effortlessly, her movements light and confident. She occasionally whispered hints, but often left him to find his own way. At first he struggled, his military training giving him a sense of linearity that the garden refused to respect. Each path he chose led him to a dead end or an unexpected loop. He grew frustrated, but the princess merely watched with amusement. "You humans think you can plan everything," she said, teasing. "But the world is not always linear. Sometimes you must trust your instincts and your companions." Ethan smiled slightly, realizing that she was teaching him something beyond the garden itself. Patience, adaptability, and trust, these were qualities that humans had in abundance, yet he had rarely thought to rely on them fully. Hours passed in the shifting garden. Ethan learned to observe patterns, predict how the paths might shift, and even anticipate the subtle cues Lyriel gave him without speaking. Slowly, he began to navigate with confidence, feeling the thrill of learning in an environment that challenged him in ways no battlefield ever could. Finally, they reached a large crystal platform at the center of the garden. It shimmered with a soft golden light, and as Ethan stepped onto it, he felt a subtle vibration beneath his feet. The princess floated to face him directly. "You have done well," she said, her tone no longer teasing but genuinely impressed. Few humans could have adapted so quickly. Few could have understood the patterns without fear or anger. Ethan lowered his gaze respectfully. "I am still learning," he admitted. "This world is incredible, and I hope to understand it better." Lyriel's eyes softened slightly. "Perhaps you are braver than I thought, but bravery is not always in deeds. Sometimes it is in openness, in revealing oneself." She paused, then said with a playful glint, "I wonder, if a human soldier can show who he truly is without armor or pretense, would he still seem so brave?" Ethan felt a small thrill at her words. It was a challenge unlike any he had faced before. He realized that she was not asking for a battle, but a demonstration of trust and courage in a more personal sense. To show vulnerability in front of someone so powerful, so alien, that required a strength of its own. He thought of the humans back home, their struggles, their successes, their ability to adapt and survive. He thought of his mission, not to conquer or dominate, but to understand and connect. And in that moment, he understood what bravery truly meant here. Slowly, deliberately, Ethan reached for the clasps of his armor. Lyriel's eyes widened slightly in surprise, though her expression remained unreadable. Piece by piece, he removed the protective layers he had worn for comfort, security, and habit. Each piece he laid down on the crystal platform felt like a symbolic gesture, a quiet statement of trust. When he finally stood there, unarmored but upright, he met her gaze directly. "I am not hiding," he said simply. "This is who I am." For a long moment, Lyriel did not speak. Then she laughed, a soft, genuine sound that carried across the floating garden. "Perhaps humans are more interesting than I thought," she said, tilting her head. "Most would never dare. Most would cling to their armor, believing it defines them. You define yourself." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest, not from the suns or the glowing garden, but from a sense of accomplishment and recognition. He had taken a risk, not with weapons, not with strength, but with honesty and courage. And the alien princess, who had taunted him at the start, now regarded him with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. The light of the twin suns began to shift, casting long, shimmering shadows across the garden. Ethan knew this was only the beginning. This world was full of mysteries, challenges, and lessons, and he was ready to face them. Lyriel extended her hand, a gesture of friendship and acknowledgement. "Come," she said. "There is more to show, more to learn, and more ways to test what makes you human, but for now you have proven something important." Ethan took her hand, feeling a sense of connection that transcended species, culture, and expectation. He had come to Erendor as a soldier in armor, but he would leave this part of the garden as a man who understood the strength of humanity's true qualities: courage, adaptability, and the willingness to be seen as oneself. As they walked together toward the next part of the palace, the floating gardens around them shimmered and shifted in response, as if acknowledging his bravery. The princess continued to smile, but the teasing edge had softened. For the first time, Ethan saw a glimpse of the person behind the playful taunts, a being curious, intelligent, and capable of respect. And in that moment, he realized that the greatest adventures often began not with battles, but with understanding, trust, and the courage to reveal one's true self. The floating garden faded behind them as Ethan followed Lyriel through a corridor of glowing crystal arches. Each step seemed to hum beneath his feet, and the air shimmered softly, as if alive. Ethan felt both exhilarated and slightly nervous. He had proven his courage in the garden, but he knew that Lyriel's challenges were only just beginning. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, and he could sense that she was planning something new, a test of mind, spirit, and character. They arrived at a wide balcony overlooking the city of Erendor. The sky was a swirl of pink and violet as the twin suns began to set. Floating islands of crystal drifted in the distance, connected by beams of glowing energy that looked like bridges of light. The city pulsed with life, alien and yet strangely inviting. "This is the next part of your trial," Lyriel said, gesturing to the view. You will navigate my city, but not as a soldier, not as someone with armor or shields. You will rely on observation, understanding, and trust." Ethan nodded. He had already begun to understand that Lyriel's idea of a challenge was not physical combat. It was about perception, adaptability, and seeing beyond appearances. That was far more difficult and far more meaningful than any battlefield test he had ever faced. She led him to a small platform that floated gently above the city. With a subtle motion of her hand, the platform began to glide forward, taking them over the streets and buildings below. Ethan could see the inhabitants of Urindor moving gracefully through the floating city, their forms elegant, almost dance-like, interacting with devices that bent light and energy in ways he could barely understand. "Your task is simple," Lyriel said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "You must find the crystal of reflection. It is hidden somewhere in the city, but the city will not make it easy. Paths shift, colors change, and sometimes what you see is not what is real. You must trust your instincts and perhaps trust me as well." Ethan felt a thrill of anticipation. This was no ordinary puzzle. The city itself seemed alive, responding to thought and emotion. He understood that he could not rely on maps, sensors, or even logic alone. He would have to observe patterns, think creatively, and remain calm under pressure. They descended onto a narrow bridge made of glowing crystal. As Ethan stepped carefully, the bridge shifted slightly, moving forward beneath him in a gentle sway. Lyriel walked beside him effortlessly, floating as if gravity had little effect on her. "Do humans always struggle with change?" she asked teasingly. "Or do you sometimes embrace it?" "We adapt," Ethan replied. "It is part of who we are. Even when circumstances change, we find ways to continue, to learn, and to grow." She smiled, clearly pleased with his answer. "We shall see if your actions match your words." The bridge led them into a district of the city where buildings were suspended in the air by light beams. Windows glowed with soft energy, and doorways seemed to appear and vanish depending on your perspective. Ethan realized quickly that the city itself was a test, not just of courage or intelligence, but of attention, observation, and perception. Lyriel paused at an intersection of floating streets. "Here is where many fail," she said. "The city will confuse you if you let fear or impatience guide your steps. You must trust your mind and your senses, and perhaps trust the human heart as well." Ethan took a deep breath. He let go of tension in his muscles, focused on observing the subtle changes in the environment, and started walking slowly, carefully. The streets shifted slightly beneath his feet, but he noticed patterns. Certain colors repeated, lights pulsed rhythmically, and the movement of the inhabitants suggested safe paths. Hours passed as they navigated the twisting city. Lyriel occasionally whispered hints, subtle gestures, or changes in tone, but mostly she let Ethan find his way. Each success brought a small thrill, a sense of accomplishment that went beyond physical achievement. He felt his mind sharpening, his intuition growing stronger. At one point, a sudden swirl of glowing mist enveloped the street. Ethan froze, unsure which way to go. The mist formed shapes that resembled obstacles, doors, and walls, but none of it was solid. He could feel his heartbeat quicken, but he reminded himself of the lesson from the garden: patience, observation, and trust. Lyriel floated beside him, her voice calm and encouraging. "Remember, the city tests your mind, not your strength. Fear clouds judgment. Calmness reveals truth." Ethan focused. He noticed a subtle rhythm in the mist, a faint pulse that suggested openings and safe paths. Following the pattern, he stepped carefully, and the mist parted as if acknowledging his choices. Lyriel's eyes glimmered with approval. Finally, they reached a plaza filled with floating crystal platforms. At the center was a pedestal holding a crystal that shimmered with a soft, internal light, the crystal of reflection. Ethan felt a sense of wonder. It seemed to respond to his presence, glowing brighter as he approached. Lyriel's voice was soft now, almost serious. "To claim the crystal, you must not only reach it, but understand what it represents. It reflects not your appearance, but your true self." "Are you ready to see who you are?" Ethan hesitated. He had faced battles, challenges, and tests before, but this was different. This was not about skill or courage in the traditional sense. It was about honesty, trust, and self-awareness. He stepped forward, hands trembling slightly as he reached for the crystal. The moment he touched it, a soft light enveloped him. Ethan saw visions not of the past or future, but of himself as he truly was. He saw moments of fear and courage, hesitation and decisiveness, doubt and hope. He saw the choices he had made, the people he had helped, and the lessons he had learned. It was not easy to face, but it filled him with a sense of clarity and purpose. Lyriel watched silently, her expression unreadable but her eyes bright. "Few humans take the time to truly see themselves," she said finally. "Most are too focused on what they show others, but understanding oneself, that is the beginning of true strength." Ethan lowered his hand from the crystal, feeling a quiet confidence. He had completed the trial, but more importantly, he had gained insight into himself and the qualities that made humans remarkable. Resilience, empathy, adaptability, and courage, not of body, but of spirit. The crystal's light dimmed, and Ethan turned to Lyriel. "I understand," he said simply. "Bravery is not just about facing danger. It is about honesty, trust, and knowing oneself." Lyriel's lips curved into a smile. "You are wise beyond your years, Lieutenant Gray. Perhaps humans have more to offer than I imagined." They continued through the city, now walking side by side rather than one leading the other. Ethan felt a growing sense of connection, not just with Lyriel, but with the world around him. The city no longer seemed like a puzzle or a test. It felt like a living entity, responsive to thought, observation, and understanding. As they moved through the streets, Lyriel spoke of her life as a princess. The expectations, the responsibilities, and the curiosity that drove her to test visitors. She revealed her fascination with humans, their resilience, and their ability to adapt to situations far beyond their homeworld. Ethan listened carefully, realizing that mutual understanding was forming, a bridge between species. They paused at a small plaza where floating lights danced like fireflies. Lyriel tilted her head, studying him closely. "There is one final part of this trial for today," she said, her voice playful once more. "I wonder, can a human soldier show courage without armor, without shields, without pretense? You have taken off your physical armor, but will you reveal your spirit as well?" Ethan felt a shiver of anticipation. The challenge was clear. Lyriel was not asking for strength or skill, but for openness, trust, and honesty. He nodded, ready to continue, ready to prove that humanity's strength was not in weapons or suits, but in the courage to be seen as oneself. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city. The glowing lights of Erendor shimmered in response, creating a kaleidoscope of color and reflection. Ethan and Lyriel stood together, ready to face whatever trials the princess had in store, confident that understanding, trust, and courage would guide them forward. As they walked toward the next district, Ethan felt a sense of excitement he had never known. He was no longer just a human soldier on an alien world. He was a participant in a living puzzle, a dialogue of cultures, and a journey of personal growth. And he knew that the lessons he was learning here would stay with him long after he left Erendor. Lyriel glanced at him, her eyes sparkling with amusement and curiosity. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we will see if your courage endures when the city itself tests your heart, not just your mind." Ethan smiled. "Then I will be ready." For the first time since arriving on Erendor, he felt that he truly belonged here, not as a conqueror, not as a soldier, but as a human capable of understanding, adapting, and connecting with the unknown. And with that thought, they disappeared into the glowing streets of the city, ready for the challenges that awaited them, confident that bravery could take many forms, and that the human spirit was ready to show its true strength. The next morning, the light of Erendor's twin suns filtered through the crystal towers of the city. Ethan awoke in a guest chamber that seemed more like a room suspended in midair than a conventional bedroom. The walls shimmered softly, reflecting colors that shifted with the sunlight. He rose, stretched, and felt a sense of anticipation he had not known in a long time. Today, he knew, would be another day of challenges, challenges of a different kind. When he stepped into the corridor, he found Lyriel waiting, floating lightly above the ground. Her eyes sparkled as if she already knew what he was capable of. "Good morning, Lieutenant Gray," she said, her voice warm but teasing. "Are you ready for the next part of our little journey?" "I am," Ethan replied, matching her playful tone. "What does today hold?" She gestured to the palace balcony, where the city stretched endlessly in every direction. Floating platforms drifted lazily through the air, some connected by glowing beams of light, others hovering alone, their surfaces reflecting the sun. "Today you will learn that bravery is not just about facing puzzles or understanding the city," she said. "It is about trust, cooperation, and seeing the world through more than one perspective. Ethan nodded, already feeling the truth of her words. He had learned to adapt, to observe, and to face the unfamiliar with patience. But he knew that Lyriel's challenges were never simple. She led him to a platform that drifted higher than the city below. From there, Ethan could see the entire expanse of the floating metropolis, the crystal spires, the energy bridges, and the glowing forests beyond. Lyriel's voice was gentle but commanding. There are tasks ahead that cannot be completed alone. You must rely on others, and sometimes on those you do not yet fully understand. Ethan understood immediately. Humans had often faced challenges in groups, but working with beings so different required something deeper: empathy, careful observation, and trust. Their first trial took them to a district of the city known as the Hall of Light. Here, crystalline structures reflected and refracted sunlight in countless directions. Beams of light created patterns across the floors and walls, shifting as the day moved. At first glance, the hall seemed like a maze, impossible to navigate. Lyriel smiled. Many visitors fail here. They are distracted by the beauty, overwhelmed by the complexity, but those who succeed do so by observing carefully and understanding the rhythm of the hall. Ethan studied the shifting patterns. He noticed that some reflections repeated in a predictable rhythm, and certain beams indicated safe paths while others led to dead ends. He began to move carefully, following the subtle cues, adjusting his steps to the constantly changing light. Lyriel floated beside him, occasionally pointing out small details, though never directly giving answers. Ethan realized that she was teaching him to trust not just his senses, but his intuition. He began to feel more confident, more aware of the patterns around him. At one point, the hall shifted dramatically, and beams of light crisscrossed in ways that almost blinded him. He froze for a moment, unsure which path to take. Lyriel's voice was calm, soothing. "Do not rush," she said. "Fear clouds judgment. Observe, breathe, and trust yourself." Ethan closed his eyes briefly, centering himself. He remembered the lesson from the garden. Courage was not about speed or force, but about clarity and patience. When he opened his eyes, he noticed a subtle difference in the reflections, a faint pulse in one of the beams. He stepped forward carefully, following the signal, and the path opened before him. Lyriel's eyes sparkled with approval. "Well done," she said. "You are learning quickly, but the hall has more to teach." They continued through the maze of light, each section presenting a new challenge. Some beams required delicate timing to cross, while others demanded careful observation of reflections that seemed almost identical. Ethan realized that this trial was about more than navigation. It was about awareness, patience, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. Hours passed, though Ethan could not be sure of time in a place where light and shadow shifted constantly. Finally, they reached a chamber at the center of the hall. Here, a small pool of liquid crystal reflected the sky above. Lyriel gestured to the surface. "Look into the pool," she said softly. "What do you see?" Ethan knelt beside it and gazed at the liquid surface. At first, he saw only his reflection, distorted by the shifting light. But gradually, the image stabilized, and he noticed subtle details. His own determination, the patience he had shown, the courage in facing the unknown, and the willingness to trust, not just the environment but Lyriel and himself. He realized that the pool reflected not just appearance but character. It was a quiet, powerful reminder of the lessons he had learned. Courage and bravery were not measured by battles won or dangers faced, but by the honesty, patience, and trust one carried within. Lyriel's voice was gentle, almost reverent. "Many believe bravery is shown through force, but true courage is shown through understanding and compassion. You have learned much, Lieutenant Gray." Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "Thank you," he said. "Your lessons are challenging, but I understand their meaning." They left the Hall of Light and moved toward another part of the city, where the floating gardens of Urindor extended like islands in the sky. Here, the challenge was not puzzles or mazes, but cooperation. Lyriel explained that several crystal spheres floated among the gardens, each carrying an energy that needed to be balanced. One person alone could not move them. It required cooperation, timing, and awareness of the other's actions. Ethan nodded. He had worked with teams before, but never with beings whose perception of the world was so different. He focused on observing Lyriel's movements, matching her rhythm, and learning how her energy influenced the spheres. At first, they struggled. The spheres moved unpredictably, and missteps caused them to drift apart. Ethan felt a twinge of frustration, but Lyriel's calm presence reminded him to be patient. They adjusted, communicating through gestures and subtle cues, until finally the spheres aligned perfectly, forming a pattern of light that shimmered across the garden. Lyriel floated above the completed formation, her expression proud. "See what can be achieved when trust and cooperation guide action," she said. "The human heart is capable of remarkable things, Lieutenant Gray, especially when paired with understanding and patience." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. He realized that human adaptability was not just a matter of survival. It was the ability to work with others, to listen, observe, and adjust. In that moment, he understood why Lyriel had challenged him so thoroughly. She wanted to see the full breadth of human qualities: courage, patience, intelligence, and empathy. After a brief rest, they continued to explore the gardens. Ethan noticed subtle signs of Lyriel's curiosity about humans. She asked questions about Earth, about his training, and about the choices that led him to become a soldier. He answered honestly, sharing both successes and mistakes, careful to show humility as well as confidence. Lyriel seemed genuinely fascinated. "You humans are full of contradictions," she said with a smile. "You can be strong yet gentle, brave yet cautious. It is interesting." As the day progressed, Ethan began to feel a connection not just with Lyriel but with Erendor itself. The city, the gardens, and the hallways seemed to respond to sincerity and honesty. It was a living world that valued understanding over aggression, observation over force, and connection over dominance. Toward evening, they arrived at a cliffside overlooking a vast valley of glowing forests. The wind carried a faint hum, and the air shimmered with energy. Lyriel turned to him, her expression both teasing and serious. "There is one final test for today," she said. "It is a simple question, but it reveals much about a person. Are you ready to answer honestly?" Ethan nodded. "I am." Lyriel's eyes glimmered. "What does bravery mean to you?" he considered carefully. "Bravery is not just facing danger or being strong. It is honesty, trust, and understanding. It is having the courage to be yourself, to act with compassion, and to face the unknown without fear of who you are." Lyriel's smile softened. "You have learned much," she said, "and yet there is always more to learn. But today you have proven that the human spirit is remarkable, not because of weapons or armor, but because of the qualities within you." Ethan felt a quiet pride. He had come to Erendor as a soldier, trained to follow orders and face conflict. But here he had discovered a different kind of courage, a courage of heart, mind, and spirit. He realized that this was the true measure of humanity. As they watched the sunset together, the glowing forests below reflected a kaleidoscope of colors, shifting gently with the wind. Ethan felt a sense of calm and belonging, knowing that he was not alone in facing challenges, and that trust and understanding could build bridges between even the most different worlds. Lyriel glanced at him, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Tomorrow we will continue," she said. "There will be new trials, new lessons, and perhaps new ways to see yourself and your people. Are you ready?" "I am," Ethan replied firmly, feeling the confidence of one who had learned to trust himself and the world around him. And with that, they walked back toward the palace, ready for whatever adventures awaited them, knowing that bravery, cooperation, and understanding would guide them forward in ways no armor or weapon ever could. The morning light on Erendor shimmered gently over the crystal, towers casting a rainbow of colors across the floating city. Ethan rose early, his mind still buzzing from the lessons of the previous days. He felt more confident now, not only in navigating this alien world, but in understanding the delicate balance between courage, observation, and trust. Each step he took in the palace seemed lighter, as if the city itself recognized the effort he had made to prove himself. Lyriel met him at the balcony, her flowing garments reflecting the soft sunlight. Her smile was warm but playful, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Good morning, Lieutenant Gray," she said. "Are you ready for today's journey? It will challenge not just your mind, but your ability to understand others." Ethan nodded. "I am ready," he replied. "What will we do first?" She gestured to a nearby platform that hovered above the city. "We will visit the Garden of Echoes. Here, every action and word reflects not only outwardly, but inwardly as well. You will learn to see yourself through the lens of others and to act with care and understanding." As they descended onto the platform, Ethan observed the city below. The streets shimmered like flowing water, the energy bridges pulsed softly, and the floating gardens glowed with vibrant colors. The beauty of the world was matched by a sense of quiet intelligence, a civilization that valued thought, creativity, and cooperation above all else. The Garden of Echoes was breathtaking. Crystalline trees swayed in gentle arcs, their leaves reflecting light in myriad colors. Streams of glowing liquid curved through the air, twisting and looping like ribbons. In the center of the garden was a large pool, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting the sky and the surrounding foliage. "This is where your lesson begins," Lyriel said. "Observe, listen, and act. The garden will show you truths about yourself, but only if you pay attention." Ethan stepped forward carefully. He noticed subtle ripples in the air, small shifts in the floating leaves, and the gentle hum of energy around him. Every movement he made seemed to cause the garden to respond, subtly altering patterns and reflections. He realized that this was not a puzzle to be solved by force, but by observation and thoughtfulness. Lyriel led him to a narrow bridge over one of the floating streams. "Here you will encounter echoes of your actions," she explained. "A gesture, a word, or even a thought can create a reflection that teaches you about yourself and your influence on others." Ethan paused, considering her words carefully. He had learned to move with patience, to observe the patterns of the city and to trust his instincts. But this was different. The garden required more than observation. It required empathy, awareness, and a willingness to see the consequences of his choices. As he stepped onto the bridge, the surface beneath him shimmered, creating a faint echo of his movements. Each step caused a ripple that traveled across the stream and reflected back in unusual ways. He raised a hand, and the echo mirrored it, slightly delayed and distorted. He experimented with his gestures, noticing how small changes in intention caused subtle differences in the reflection. Lyriel floated beside him, watching quietly. "Notice how your actions influence what you see," she said softly. "Even small gestures can create lasting effects. The same is true with humans and those around you. Understanding this is a form of bravery, caring for the impact you have." Ethan nodded. He had never considered courage in this way before. It was not about facing danger or completing challenges, but about being aware of one's influence and acting thoughtfully. He smiled slightly, realizing how much he had grown in just a few days. As they continued through the garden, they encountered floating platforms with intricate patterns. To cross, Ethan had to observe the echoes of his own movements carefully. One misstep could cause the platform to shift unpredictably, making it difficult to proceed. He focused, moving deliberately and noting how Lyriel's gestures complemented his own. Together, they synchronized their movements, learning to trust and anticipate each other. Hours passed as they explored deeper into the garden. Ethan noticed that the echoes were not just reflections of movement, but of emotion. Moments of doubt caused ripples to distort unpredictably, while confidence and calmness created smooth, flowing patterns. He began to understand that the garden was teaching more than observation. It was teaching awareness of self and others. At the heart of the garden, they reached the pool Lyriel had mentioned. The surface shimmered with internal light, reflecting not only their forms but also subtle images of their thoughts and intentions. Ethan knelt beside it, feeling a strange mixture of awe and anticipation. "What do you see?" Lyriel asked, her voice gentle. Ethan looked closely. At first, he saw only his own reflection, unremarkable in appearance. But gradually, the images shifted, revealing moments from his life, times when he had acted with courage, empathy, and wisdom, as well as moments of doubt and hesitation. The reflection was not judgmental, it simply showed truth. "I see myself," he said softly, "not just how I appear, but the choices I've made, the impact I've had on others, and the person I am becoming." Lyriel's smile was approving. "Yes. Bravery is not only about facing danger. It is about understanding yourself and your influence and choosing to act with care and integrity. You are learning well, Lieutenant Gray." Ethan felt a quiet pride. He had come to Urindor as a soldier, trained to follow orders and protect others with strength and skill. Here, he was learning a different kind of strength, a strength of character, insight, and empathy. After a brief pause, Lyriel led him to a part of the garden where floating platforms formed a path over a sparkling chasm. Between each platform were gaps that required timing, attention, and cooperation. Ethan noticed that the platforms responded to the energy of those who stepped on them. They moved smoothly when the traveler acted with awareness, but shifted unpredictably when hesitation or doubt crept in. Ethan stepped carefully, feeling each movement with heightened awareness. Lyriel floated alongside him, offering subtle guidance through gestures rather than words. They moved in harmony, and the path became clear. The exercise was not difficult in a physical sense, but it demanded mental clarity, trust, and patience. At the end of the path, they reached a terrace overlooking the city and forests below. The sunlight danced on the floating islands, casting gentle reflections across the gardens. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm and accomplishment. Lyriel turned to him, her expression a mix of playfulness and seriousness. "You have done well," she said. "The garden shows that humans are capable of great understanding and empathy. Your bravery is not measured by weapons or strength, but by insight, trust, and the courage to act with care." Ethan smiled. "I am learning that each day brings a new lesson and that true courage comes from within." Lyriel nodded. "Indeed, and yet there is more to discover. The next trial will challenge your ability to act not just with yourself in mind, but with others. Cooperation, empathy, and understanding will guide you through what comes next." As the sun began to set, they returned to the palace, walking through corridors that glimmered softly with energy. Ethan felt a growing connection with Lyriel, not just as a guide or teacher, but as a companion. Their relationship had shifted from teasing and challenge to mutual respect and curiosity. That evening, they observed the city from a high terrace. Lights from the floating platforms shimmered like stars, and the forests glowed softly in the distance. Ethan reflected on the lessons of the day, the importance of patience, observation, and empathy, and realized that these qualities were as vital as any skill he had learned in military training. Lyriel turned to him, her eyes shining in the soft light. "Tomorrow, we will explore the value of collaboration further. You will see that courage is not only an individual quality, but one that grows when we work with others and understand their perspectives." Ethan nodded. "I look forward to it," he said. "I feel that each day here teaches me something new about the human spirit and about connection." Lyriel smiled. "You are learning quickly. Perhaps humans are not as simple as I first imagined. There is depth, adaptability, and wisdom within you that few beings recognize at first glance." As they watched the twin suns dip below the horizon, casting the city in hues of pink and violet, Ethan felt a quiet sense of purpose. He had come to Urindor as a human soldier, trained to act in battle, but he was discovering that the true measure of humanity was not strength, but courage of heart, understanding, and empathy. And with Lyriel by his side, he knew that the journey was only beginning. Together, they would explore the limits of trust, cooperation, and connection, learning not just about the world around them, but about themselves and the qualities that made humans remarkable. Ethan felt excitement for the future, less for what challenges awaited, and more for the discoveries he would make along the way. He understood now that bravery was not a singular act, but a continuous choice, to observe, to trust, to understand, and to act with integrity. As the city lights glimmered below, Ethan and Lyriel sat quietly, contemplating the lessons of the day and the adventures yet to come. The bond between them had deepened, built on trust, mutual respect, and shared experiences. And as night fell over Urindor, the floating city shimmered like a living constellation, a symbol of the endless possibilities that awaited those who dared to understand, to connect, and to embrace courage in its many forms. The morning sun bathed Urindor in soft gold, reflecting off the crystal towers and the floating gardens below. Ethan stood on the palace balcony, feeling a sense of anticipation he had never experienced on any mission before. He had learned so much in the days since his arrival: courage, patience, trust, and understanding. And now, the final part of his journey with Lyriel awaited him. Lyriel appeared beside him, her green eyes sparkling with amusement and curiosity. "Good morning, Lieutenant Gray," she said softly. "Today is not just about trials or challenges. Today you will see how your choices can connect not only with me, but with an entire world." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He understood that this day would be different. It was no longer about proving himself through puzzles, observation, or cooperation. It was about understanding responsibility, influence, and the power of connection. She led him to a floating platform at the edge of the city. Below stretched a vast expanse of glowing forests, crystal rivers, and distant mountains. The platform hovered gently, allowing them to see the entirety of Urindor in a single glance. "This is the Nexus," Lyriel explained. "It is the heart of our city, where energy flows, life is sustained, and decisions ripple across the world. Today, you will see the impact of human understanding and cooperation in action." Ethan felt a thrill of anticipation. He had learned so much already, but the idea of seeing the tangible effects of his actions on an entire civilization was awe-inspiring. Lyriel gestured toward a set of floating spheres suspended above the platform. Each sphere contained images, colors, and lights that pulsed gently, responding to the presence and energy of those around them. "These spheres reflect influence," she said. "Every choice you make, every action you take, creates ripples. Here you will learn how interconnected all beings can be." Ethan approached carefully, noticing that the spheres responded to subtle movements. When he raised his hand, a soft glow traveled through one of the spheres, spreading into others. He realized that even the smallest gesture could create a wave of change, touching distant parts of the city and the lives of its inhabitants. Lyriel floated beside him, her expression serious now. "Many humans believe that strength is measured by control or force," she said. "But true strength is measured by understanding, cooperation, and the ability to influence positively. Are you ready to see the results of your choices?" Ethan nodded. "I am." She gestured toward a large, central sphere that pulsed with a golden light. "Place your hand here," she instructed. "Focus on what you wish to achieve, not with power, but with care, trust, and understanding." Ethan placed his hand on the sphere and closed his eyes. He thought of the lessons he had learned: patience, observation, trust, cooperation, empathy. He imagined these qualities spreading throughout the city, reaching the hearts and minds of its people, creating harmony, understanding, and connection. The sphere responded immediately. Light radiated outward in ripples, moving through the other spheres, casting glowing patterns across the city below. Ethan opened his eyes, amazed. The energy of the city itself seemed to respond, shimmering brighter and more vibrant, reflecting the influence of his intentions. Lyriel smiled, her eyes bright with approval. "See, Lieutenant Gray, courage, understanding, and cooperation create ripples far beyond yourself. You are not just a soldier. You are a being capable of shaping worlds through thought, action, and trust." Ethan felt a quiet pride. He had arrived on Urindor expecting to face challenges of skill and bravery, but he had discovered something far more profound: the ability to influence positively through insight, empathy, and connection. They moved together through the city, visiting districts that had been subtly shaped by his actions. The floating gardens glowed brighter, paths were smoother, and the inhabitants moved with a harmony that reflected the ripple of understanding he had created. Ethan realized that courage and influence were not always visible. They were felt in the choices one made, the care one showed, and the connections one fostered. Lyriel guided him to a terrace overlooking the Hall of Light, where they had faced one of their earlier trials. "This place is a reminder of where you began," she said, "and of how far you have come. You have learned to observe, to trust, and to act with wisdom. But perhaps most importantly, you have learned that strength comes from within, and that connection is the greatest courage of all." Ethan looked at the hall, remembering the challenges, the reflections, and the lessons. He had learned to navigate the city, to understand the patterns of the environment, and to cooperate with Lyriel. But beyond that, he had learned about himself, his capacity for empathy, insight, and understanding. Lyriel floated closer, her expression softening. "Humans are remarkable," she said. "You adapt, you learn, and you grow. You are capable of courage that does not require weapons or armor, of strength that does not rely on force, and you are capable of connection that reaches far beyond your own world." Ethan smiled. "I see that now. Bravery is not about facing danger alone. It is about honesty, empathy, and the willingness to act for the greater good." Lyriel's eyes gleamed. "Exactly, and you have proven that humans can be more than what others expect. You have shown that even in a world as different as this, trust, cooperation, and understanding can create harmony." They continued through the city, observing how their actions influenced the floating platforms, the gardens, and the streams of energy that connected the entire civilization. Ethan felt a sense of unity and purpose, understanding that his presence had made a difference, not through force, but through thoughtful action and connection. As the day progressed, Lyriel guided him to a final part of their journey, the Terrace of Reflection. This terrace overlooked the entire city and the surrounding landscapes, a breathtaking view that stretched as far as the eye could see. The air was filled with soft hums of energy, and the light of the setting suns danced across the crystals. "Here you will see the culmination of your journey," Lyriel said. "Look at the city, the gardens, the floating platforms, and the forests beyond. See how your choices, your courage, and your understanding have shaped what you experience now." Ethan gazed out across the expanse. The city shimmered with a vibrant glow, the gardens pulsed gently, and the inhabitants moved in harmony. Every reflection, every ripple of light seemed to speak of cooperation, trust, and understanding. He realized that his journey had not only shaped his own growth, but had touched the world around him in meaningful ways. Lyriel floated beside him, her expression thoughtful. "You have learned that bravery is not always about facing danger," she said softly. "It is about facing yourself, understanding others, and acting with wisdom and care. You have proven that humans are capable of remarkable things when they choose to trust, connect, and lead with integrity." Ethan felt a quiet joy. He had come to Urindor expecting to prove himself as a soldier, but he had discovered something far greater: the ability to influence positively, to understand deeply, and to act with compassion and courage. Lyriel's gaze softened, and she extended a hand toward him. "This journey does not end here, Lieutenant Gray. The lessons you have learned, the trust you have built, and the courage you have shown will guide you long after you leave Urindor. And perhaps one day, our worlds will work together not as conqueror and conquered, but as allies, friends, and collaborators." Ethan took her hand, feeling the warmth and sincerity in her gesture. "I will carry these lessons with me," he said. "And I will do my best to share them with others, to show that courage, empathy, and understanding are the true strengths of humanity." They stood together on the terrace, watching the sun set and the city glow with life. The floating gardens shimmered, the crystal towers reflected the fading light, and the streams of energy pulsed gently across the metropolis. Ethan felt a profound sense of connection, not only with Lyriel but with Urindor itself, and with the idea that humanity's qualities could bridge worlds. Lyriel smiled, her playful curiosity returning. "You have exceeded my expectations, Lieutenant Gray," she said. "I wondered at first if humans could face these challenges without relying on armor or weapons. But you have shown that true strength lies within, and that connection is the greatest courage of all." Ethan smiled back, feeling a sense of fulfillment. He had learned, grown, and connected in ways he had never imagined. The alien world of Urindor had taught him lessons about bravery, empathy, and influence that he would carry with him forever. As night fell over the floating city, the lights shimmered like stars, casting a gentle glow over Ethan and Lyriel. The bond they had formed through challenge, cooperation, and trust was strong, a bridge between worlds and a testament to the power of understanding. Ethan realized that his journey had been more than a mission. It had been a lesson in what it truly meant to be human, adaptable, courageous, empathetic, and capable of connection. And with Lyriel as a friend and ally, he knew that the possibilities for the future were endless. They watched the city together in comfortable silence, sharing the quiet understanding that had grown between them. The lessons of the past days, the courage to reveal oneself, the patience to observe, the empathy to understand, and the trust to cooperate, had culminated in this moment of clarity and unity. Ethan knew that he would leave Urindor as more than a soldier. He would leave as a human who had discovered the depths of courage and connection, capable of influencing the world around him with wisdom, empathy, and integrity. And as he looked at Lyriel, he felt a profound sense of hope. That one day, humans and Urindorians might walk together, sharing knowledge, culture, and understanding, guided by the same values they had cultivated on this extraordinary journey. The twin moons of Urindor rose, casting a soft silver light across the city. Ethan and Lyriel remained on the terrace, reflecting on the lessons they had learned and the bond they had formed. The journey was complete, but the path forward was full of promise, adventure, and the potential for lasting connection between two very different worlds. And in that quiet, shimmering night, Ethan Gray understood the true meaning of bravery. It was not in armor, not in weapons, not in battles won, but in trust, empathy, understanding, and the courage to act with heart and integrity.